Since none of us ever knew him, can you talk about your fondest memories of your dad? Best memory.
Fondest?
Fondest
I
memory.
don't have any fondest.
Even as a child?
I don't have much memory of him at all because he was never around for dinner or, I don't know, he was late, he was out with clients.
That's true.
He caused my mother a lot of anxiety and
Heartache.
heartache, right. A lot of crying, a lot of angry words at night, waking us up.
Coming home late.
It was actually good when he left. He, just moved out. And so, no, I mean, I've said I hated my dad, and I still do hate my dad. So they're not good memories of him.
Right.
Any other siblings have some positive memories?
Well, Jim does, and Jean do, I think. Don't you?
How was yours different?
Oh, is mine different?
Different than mom's. Yeah.
Because my father treated me like the prince.
Yeah, he did.
How so?
Well, I was explaining this afternoon that I went to New York with my father when I was 14 years old.
You told us that already.
I said that.
That was planned. Don't worry.
Go ahead.
I forget.
New York, 14.
I did everything that you could possibly think of in about 3 days at most.
Gene?
I don't really have a fondest remember.
Did you all feel that he treated Uncle Jim as the prince?
Yeah.
Yes.
Same thing about Grandma Carmen. Tell us, what did you admire most about your mom?
She was always there.
Yes.
She was there in the morning when we got up. She was there when we came home from school.
She put us first.
Raised
Yeah.
us.
She raised us.
Put us first.
She did all that.
Devoted her life to us.
She was always there.
We all went to university. She put us through school.
She would serve dinner, and the
Standing
boy
up.
standing up. By the time she finished serving the six, the boys were asking for seconds, and she hadn't sat down to eat yet. And she was willing to serve them seconds before she sat down.
Well, actually,
And
there
many
wasn't
times Dad
space
wasn't
for her
even
to
there.
sit
Yeah.
down when we all six
Yeah.
were around the
For dinner.
table. We ate in the kitchen, and she served us from the stove. We didn't have serving dishes on
Right.
on the table.
Yeah.
So she would dish up your plate, and then I remember one time Jean hated peas, and we had peas for dinner, and he wasn't eating them, and Mother said he could not leave the table until he ate those peas, and he sat there, and he sat there, and he sat there.
For hours.
3 hours.
Till 9 o'clock.
I did that too.
Till 9 o'clock.
I put my plate on the
He tried to
kitchen
feed
floor,
it to
the
the
dog, and Mom heard the click clack of the dog's toenails on the floor. You're feeding Sam. That doesn't count.
I have another thing to add about peas.
To this
Shortly
day.
after Julie and I, Julie will hate this, but I'm going to tell it anyways. Julie and I got invited to Mom's house for dinner shortly after we got married. It was just Julie and I and Mom. And Mom cooked a nice dinner for us. And Mom was old-fashioned. She served from the stove, and Julie carried the plates to the table. So they told me to sit down, and Mom was dishing up my plate, and of course she put a lot of green beans on my plate. So I get this plate, and it's got like what I would call a double helping of green beans, right? So Julie goes back to the stove. Mom dishes up her plate, And she comes back and puts her plate down, and she goes back, gets Mom's plate. So we finish dinner, and it's time to leave, and we get into the car, and I look at Julie, and there's tears coming down her eyes, down her. I said, Julie, what the hell's wrong with you? She says, you'll eat your mother's green beans, but you won't eat mine. I said, Julie, I didn't eat any green beans. She says, yes, you did. You ate a whole helping full. I said, when you went back to get Mom's plate, I said, you ate 2 helpings of green beans.
So I know that my mum has said that one of the lifelong lessons that she learned from Grandma Carmen was that she would never be poor,
Yeah.
because Grandma taught her how to budget and how to be careful with
My
money.
mother taught me the value of money in a very hard way. But my God, do I appreciate it now, because the mantra I had throughout my childhood was, can I go horseback riding? No, I can't afford it. Can I go and buy a book? No, I can't afford it. The mantra was, no, I can't afford it. No, I can't afford it. No, I can't afford it. But my God, I know today how much money, not what I have, but what I don't have. And that's the important thing. And I have to have a cushion in my bank account, and it mustn't go below that, because I start getting nervous. And my mother taught me that.
And I wondered if the rest of you felt that Grandma Carmen had taught you any lifelong lessons that you've sort of lived by or kept to,
Many.
or that have made a difference to you.
Many. In all categories.
Always do well in school
Yeah.
and be on your best
If
behavior.
you want to dance, you have to pay the piper.
And behave in church. Behave in church.
Her favorite,
Be on time. Treat others like you would like to be treated.
And pay your credit card balance
Yeah.
every month. And to this day, I do that 99.9% of my
And it
entire
has to
life.
come out even, right?
Mhm.
And I don't even do that. So she didn't teach me that. And if she did, I still wouldn't do it. I figure the bank knows money better than I do, so, yeah. But I did catch the bank one time.
Making an error.
Yes, making an error, yes. And I was right and they were wrong.
One thing about Mom, this will tear me up, because the last thing she ever said to me was, she was in the hospital, and I'd been working all day, so I went to the hospital, and she said to me, go home, you've had a long enough day. And that was the last words that she said to me.
Because she was taking care of you.
And she always said, before she got sick, that God was keeping her alive to help me with Matthew. Matthew cried like a baby at her funeral, because she was his baby Nana. That was his nickname for her, because when we would pull up the driveway on Sundays, she would come to the back door and she says, there's my baby. And as a little tiny tot, he would say, baby Nana. And so that's what he called her pretty much through his entire childhood. She was his baby Nana.
Do you have a personal memory of your mom that related only to you, that was, that this was something she did or said that just was for you, not the other siblings? If you
Yeah.
could share that.
I've got one.
Yeah.
Because of the way I met Chris, she had a hard time handling that.
yeah, she did.
She did, yeah. She was furious to start with. But when she first came over to visit us, she came up to me and said, you were the one I worried about most. She said, but I think you're the happiest of all of them. And my husband admired her so much, because she brought up 6 kids They all went to university. None of them drink a lot. None of them smoke. None of them got into cocaine, drugs, anything like that. And that's something for a parent today. So, yeah, that just related to me.
I think she was always there for us. She was always, anything that was going so-so, she would be the one that would settle everything.
You could talk to her
and
about anything.
take it, yeah.
How did Grandma Carmen feel about you, leaving to go become a flight attendant?
I think she took it well, that I was doing it, and it was something that I wanted to do, and I think she didn't really stop me from doing it. She
Well, you had a
Just
good job that you
enjoyed-
gave up to
She,
do that.
she enjoyed, letting me go. That I went to New York and, really didn't come back since.
Right.
I'm still there in New York.
We are?
We could always do what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mother
Except
Mary-
for me. Because I wanted to go to the Disney Studios and be one of the people that colors in the celluloid films for the cartoons. And she said, no, you're not going. No way are you going. And I was desperate.
But you were 42 then.
I wasn't even out of high school. So no, she kind of spoiled my
I
day.
think she wanted to keep you around for a while because we were all gone by then.
Because I used to do her hair. Yeah.
My favorite moment with Mom was when I was living in South Africa and had come home on home leave. And Julie and I were at the end of the home leave. We talked Mom into coming over to visit us in South Africa. So we flew from Detroit to New York, and then New York to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And we had a layover there. Our kids were still pretty young at that point in time. And so we took turns staying with the kids, and one of us, Julie or I, would take Mom out to dinner. So this one night, Julie stayed with the kids, and I took my mom to the top of the Meridian Hotel, which is right on overlooking Copacabana Beach in downtown Rio de Janeiro. And so we're at the top of this hotel, and as we entered, I tipped the maitre d' and told him I wanted the table by the window. So he gave us a center seat. If this table was the dining room, and the ocean was over here, he gave us a table for two, right smack there. And right there was a grand piano with a pianist in a tux. And I sat here, my mom sat on the other side of the table. And we're looking out over Copacabana Beach and having a glass of wine or whatever. And my mom looked at me and I looked at her. And I went, well, what do you think, Ollie? And my mom got this big smile on her face, like she couldn't believe that one of her kids was living overseas, and she was at the top of the...
Taking her to this exotic place.
Yes. Yeah.
She came home and said, I said, well, what'd you think of Port Elizabeth or whatever? She said, never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would be sitting on the beach dunking my feet in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, she loved the beach.
Empire, Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Empire,
Favorite place.
Michigan. She thought that was heaven.
Yeah.
Her trips with Helen Smith or little girlfriend getaways up to northern Michigan.
Yeah.
And Gwen Frostig, that's Susan Sells, her
Mhm.
friends. When I see those in Susan's shop, it's Mom.
Yeah. It's,
She always wanted them. Even if she didn't go up there, she wanted somebody to bring her back something from Gwen Frosty. Always went there. Wherever we were, wherever we stayed, we had to go to see Gwen Frosty.
My favorite memory is when, a couple of them, was when I graduated from college. And it was commencement night, and I said to Mom, "Oh, are you coming?" And she says, "Oh no." She says, you see one, you see them all." So, then the other thing was, I would sit at home and the dog would be on one side, and I'd have a book on my lap, and I'd be watching some TV program and doing my homework, and she'd say, "You will never do justice to your schoolwork," she said, "watching television." And so when it came to my night of my graduation from law school, and after I had passed the bar, I said to her,
It was on TV.
I said, "See, Mom, I told you I could do it."
We always watched television doing our homework.
Yeah, but she didn't like that.
I don't remember her ever saying nothing.
But she
You could-
picked on me more.
Oh. Well, you weren't the best student. You weren't the best student.
I never tried to be. I had other interests.
All right. So a couple of you have, let's say, unusual names, like Raylene, like Georgia. Can you take us through each one of your names and why you were named? Do you know? Well, I don't know, Suzanne.
No, I don't know.
You got a very original name. It was maybe because they liked it.
I don't know how she chose it.
Suzanne Gale.
Yeah. I don't know if it was a name that she got from some book she read, or
Right,
I might have asked her, but if she told me, I don't remember.
right. How about you, Mom?
Well, I was named Raylene because Dad's father was
Raymond.
Raymond.
You were supposed
So
to
I
be a
got,
boy.
yeah, and I was supposed to have been a boy.
Which I was a tomboy.
She was.
I'd be the one out swinging from trees and doing all kinds of
Building forts and
Falling in the canal.
falling in
In
the
the
canal
canal,
several
yeah.
times.
It's a wonder she didn't
Where
drown
did the
accidentally.
Joanne part of it come from?
Because he was
Raymond J.
Raylene,
Oh,
Joanne.
Yeah, Raymond J.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Raymond J.
Jacob.
Jacob, yeah.
And you, Uncle Jim? Because although James is fairly standard, you have an unusual middle
I
name.
was named after my great-grandfather.
What is your middle name?
What is my middle name?
Yeah.
Warner. James Reese Warner was,
That was a family name, wasn't it, Warner?
that was Grandma Warner's husband's
Right,
name.
yeah.
And Jean, do you know why you have your name? And what is your middle name? 'Cause I don't
Well,
know.
that's an interesting question because
What are you
our
laughing
next door neighbor at the time that I was born was a man by the name of Jean Boulanger,
The next door neighbor.
the next door neighbor.
The plot
It's named after, it's named after the next door neighbor.
And supposedly I was named after the next door neighbor. But he wanted my name to be spelled Jean, which is the French way,
Who,
or
the neighbor?
Yeah.
yes.
Well, the
And-
neighbor spelled it like that.
'Cause that's,
And my mother felt that's sort of the feminine version of Jean, in this country.
Right.
So she spelled it Gene. My middle name is Raymond, and I think that was probably came from my grandfather, Raymond Francis. So that's how I became Gene Raymond.
Do you
And-
know what the relationship
And
was?
to this day, I'm really not sure who my father was. I look like I have silver hair like my dad, but I don't think I ever met Mr. Belanger, so I'm not sure what he looks like.
So you could be our half brother.
We weren't living next to him when you were born. We weren't next to Gene Belanger.
Yes, we were.
Yes, we were. I
We
was born
were?
on- We were living on
1924.
Statler.
Oh, I thought you came in after we moved to the other house.
No.
I just remember because he was in a crib in Mom and Dad's room in the house next to the
Back up.
theater.
Back up, your 2 houses too late.
No, because she used to run the vacuum in that master bedroom on the first floor of the house on Jefferson. And to put Gene to sleep. He would go to sleep to the sound of the vacuum cleaner.
Do you remember when I fell through the floor into the beauty parlor? That's a story in itself. When I was about 4, somewhere around there, we lived in a house. We lived in a house that I think our grandfather
Yeah.
owned,
Yeah.
and it was next to a theater that our grandmother owned and ran, because she wanted a business. She wanted something to keep her busy. So Grandpa bought her a theater and said, run it. And she paid people to run it. And so anyways, the house that we lived in was right next to this theater on Jefferson Avenue in Detroit, or in Sinclair Shores. And there was, part of the basement had been turned into a beauty parlor. So the people would park their cars in this parking lot that was next to our house, and they'd go down these steps into like the front corner of this house basement that had been turned into a beauty parlor.
Was Grandpa's office.
Originally?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So anyways, it had been turned into a beauty parlor, and Mom was cleaning the living room this one day. I think I was about probably 4, I guess, 3 or 4, somewhere in there. And these old houses, the heating system was in the floor, and there was like an iron or a steel grate over it. Well, Mom took that off, and because there was all kinds of dust in the bottom. Well, I was adventurous, and I stepped into the grate. Well, I went through the grate, and I popped the ceiling of the beauty parlor. And as I fell through, this was probably the ceiling of the beauty parlor. Well, I threw up my arms like this, and I was suspended with just my legs hanging into the beauty parlor, and all these women screaming. True story. And my mom grabbed me and pulled me up. These people in the beauty parlor are going nuts.
Going back to the names. So, Mum, why are you Mary Carmen?
Because I was due at Christmas time, and originally they were going to call me Merry Christmas, or even worse, Merry Noel. Thank God sense came into it somewhere, and I became Mary because of the Christmas thing, but spelt as Mary is usually spelled for a name, and Carmen after my mother. I hate the name Carmen. I never use it since the day I got married. I signed my name MC Knight, but nobody knows what C stands for. in England.
But we still
You
call
realize,
you Mary
we
Carmen.
distinguish you from Mary Z by
Yeah,
calling you
right.
Mary
Mary
Carmen.
Carmen.
all the
She's always,
time.
she's always been Mary
Yeah.
Carmen.
Yeah,
Yes.
We
And I
always
still
use-
hate it.
always use both.
Guess what? It ain't going away.
And Georgia.
Well, Jim can answer the story.
Oh, yes.
Or my name.
Well, Suzanne can answer it too. It's okay, Mary Lee.
Yep,
No, but you tell it so well.
yeah, go ahead.
Mother had a very good friend, Kay Fruhoff Seymour. And they were talking about, her mom was talking about maybe naming her after Kay, Kathleen, or Catherine. And so we said, yeah, we voted for Catherine,
Kathy,
or Kathy.
yeah, we wanted Kathy.
And so, 1 vote, 2 votes, 3 votes, I mean, we were there. I think he might have, one of the few times he voted with us. And so.
If I was lucky.
And so, Mom comes home from the hospital with Dad and got this little infant. And we said, oh, Kathy, you know. They said, no, her name is Georgia Kay. We said, Georgia!
And you wonder why I've hated my name my entire life.
And Dad said after 6 of them, he wanted one named after him.
Yeah. We hated it.
Hated it.
Where
We
did,
knew she was a Kathy, and we wanted a Kathy.
where did Gigi come from?
Because she didn't like Georgia.
Well,
No,
I didn't name myself
No,
Gigi, but
no, we
Mom,
called you.
yeah.
Well, we've changed
Gigi
your
or
name now. It's
Gigi?
now Martha.
Yeah.
We call it Mary. My Mary calls her Martha all the time.
She does. She does.
Do any of the rest of you have nicknames?
Gene had one
Homer.
for me, and he still
These
uses
two
it.
are Homer.
Lulu.
They're both
Lulu.
Homer.
Yeah,
They're
Lulu,
both
he
Homer.
calls me Lulu, always.
I'm the only one that's allowed.
Yeah, you're the only one that,
This
but
is
you couldn't,
Homer.
you
I
had,
couldn't say
your
Suzanne.
tongue was tied, and you couldn't say S's, and so it just became Lulu, and you stuck with it.
When I call her on the phone, I always
Yeah.
say, hello, Lulu.
Yep, you always did.
Didn't you two call each other Cece or
Sissy and Coco.
Yeah.
Sissy,
Yeah.
Sissy and Coco.
Sissy? and
Where did that
Coco?
come from?
We made them up.
We made them. I hated it.
I don't know whether you were Sissy
I
or
was Coco.
you were Coco. That was when we lived on Statler,
Yes.
and we moved
I
from there when I was
hated it.
7. So
I don't want to be Coco. I want to be somebody else.
well, then I must have named you. I took the name that I wanted and gave you Coco.
That sounds about right.
Because you were older.
Yeah.
But I was the one that rescued you
When
all the times you fell into the canal.
I could swim.
You were Sissy for a long time.
That was
Mom.
Sally Bedrosian
Smith.
yeah, Sally Smith. She's the one that I think that gave me that, or her
Or
mother.
Helen did.
Yeah, Helen. Her mother.
Helen did.
Her mother was one that,
Because Sally was an only
Sissy,
child,
Sissy.
and she was
which I
close,
hated.
close in age to Raylene. And Raylene became Sissy, because Helen called you
Yeah,
Sissy.
yeah. Which I hated.
I
That
thought you were
name.
Coco.
Huh?
I thought she was Coco.
Had a lot of names.
These 3 almost let me drown one time. Yeah, really.
What
We
happened?
messed
Well,
that
couldn't
up.
you swim yourself?
Well, we were living in the same house in Jefferson, on St. Clair Shores, across the street from Lake St. Clair. And they used to swim behind the house across the street from us in Lake St. Clair, because the
Mrs. Lingeman's.
Mrs. Lingeman let them use their dock to swim off of. Well, when I think I was 4, Mom told them to take me over, but to watch me, because I couldn't swim. So they take me over, and they told me to stay on the dock. So the three of them, their friends are in the water, so they wander off, and I'm on the dock, and I saw something floating on the water. I don't know whether it was a piece of paper or a leaf or something. So I got down and I reached over to grab it, and I fell in. And I don't know how deep it was, probably.
Well, very deep because
It wasn't very deep, but I wasn't very tall either. And I went down, then I came up, and I went down, and I came up. And the third time down, well, by this time my stomach was pretty full of water. Because I had never been in the lake or knew how to swim. And I was panicking. And on the third time up, I was able to grab the dock. And of course, and they were from here to the other room,
We're on the sandbar.
playing with their friend. They never. And so I was able to grab the dock, and somehow I got back up on the dock, and I'm sopping wet. And they finally come over, and how the hell did you get all wet? I told them I fell in. Well, they were all upset because they had to explain to Mom why I was all wet. But I damn near drowned that day.
Did you ever learn how to swim?
I was afraid of the water until I was about 13. I didn't learn how to swim until I was in 8th grade because I was scared of the water.
So that House by the Theater, what's your favorite movie you remember from that time period? From seeing it at the theater, because you could get in for free.
Yeah.
Don Winslow.
Don't look at me. BG before Georgia.
We didn't go into the movies. We would stay in the back of the movie
Side door.
Side door,
Yeah.
yeah.
The exit
And
from
open
the
the
front of-
door and go in where the curtain was.
Peek
they had
around the curtain. Sit
by
on the
that
steps
door.
and watch the movie.
We would-
Or taking the trash out behind the theater and the sound box was extended out and you could hear the dialogue out there. So we would stand there and listen. Oh yeah, that's that part. I remember that part. Mom would say, well, what took you so long to, take that garbage out? I don't know.
Joe and I we'd get into a fight or something.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
I was getting the crap beat out of me. And Mom would break it up and get mad at both of us. So we'd take off, we'd run into all the ushers knew us because Grandma owned the theater. So we'd go hide in the theater. And Mom would come in looking for us. Well, she could never find us in the theater. It was all dark in there. But we caught hell when we got home.
We thought we were something because we would just walk in the theater and say, my grandma owns the theater. Just walk right by them.
Well, Grandma used to tell us you can have one thing out of the candy.
Grandma was a disciplinarian and Grandma,
God, yes.
yes. And we would dread having her come over because we'd go hide under this big Christmas tree that was in the front of the house. Because here she comes and she meant work. What are you kiddos doing? And get the rake and get those
Go
leaves.
get your bucket.
Now, this was Grandma Frances.
Yes.
Yes.
What was her name? Her full name?
Eva.
Yeah,
Eva B.
Eva St. John was her maiden name.
Her middle name was B. B-E-E.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And she was married to
Grandpa Tom.
Arjit.
Yes,
Archie.
yes,
Okay.
There's 2 streets there are 3 streets.
two.
Yeah, in St. Clair Shores, Grandpa Francis was a realtor. Way back in, I guess, the 40s, he bought a farm and subdivided it. which gave him the right to name the streets. And there's 2 streets in St. Clair Shores. One's called Raymond, and the next street is called Francis. And it's named after Grandpa.
Is that where the theater was?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, there was the house, the parking lot for the theater, and the first one was, I don't know if that one was
Uncle
Raymond.
Joe's Hardware was next to the
No,
theater.
there was the theater, there was
Yeah.
the
ice
Beehive.
cream place, and then the
Beehive was next.
Beehive, and
And
then
then
there was
Uncle
the
Joe's.
Uncle Joe's.
Yeah, but there
hardware-
was
hardware
also
store.
a barber in that strip mall. Yeah, it's a strip mall, we call it that now,
There's
but,
a grocery store there.
Yeah,
Uncle-
at
That was on
at
the end.
of it. Yeah, at the
but
end of the,
there was a dairy bar, and I think there was a barber shop that had the
yeah.
red and white thing that goes around, and then Uncle Joe and Aunt Marie's hardware store, and then the grocery store,
Our Aunt Marie was our dad's sister,
his only sibling.
and so
We had 2 first cousins, Donna and Barbara Ann, from that
Period.
aunt and uncle.
Period.
Period.
yeah.
His mother was an only child.
Yeah.
So you were saying that Grandpa Francis was a realtor and he had given your grandmother the movie theatre to run and have as a business, but he had his finger in
He
At
owned
least
that
a couple
whole
of
strip.
pies.
He owned that whole strip plus the house. and
She
the-
got through the Depression because she had the theater. And he took his lumps in the real estate business during the Depression.
But he and your father went into a couple of business
Oh, they
deals,
were always
didn't they?
into something.
Yeah.
So you talked about being in business with the Bergamos and
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was later.
That was a big piece of property. But my mother had to sell it when my father died to cover the debts that my dad had racked up.
Well, another part, the first part of that story was Grandpa Francis and our dad bought the Bergamo property, which was 20 acres of land adjacent to Lake St. Clair at the foot of 9 Mile Road.
It's 13 acres.
No, it was 20 acres.
It's 13 acres.
Jeez.
It was 20 acres because 7 of it was leased to the yacht club. It was 20 acres of land. And they bought it on a tax sale because Dad was connected to the St. Clair Shores. Anyways, this piece of property, part of the property was a swamp. The part down by the lake was a swamp, more or less. And back in the late 40s, early 50s, the Interstate 94 was being built from Dearborn through Detroit all the way up to St. Clair Shores. And that freeway was subgrade because of all of the city streets that were crossing it. Because it was a road that sort of went like this, and Detroit was built like the streets were designed like the wheel of or the spokes of a wheel. So they had to dig, in order not to tear up all these streets, they dug under the streets to build the expressway. Well, the government needed a place to dump all that dirt. And a lot of it got dumped on the Bergamo property to fill in for it was a swamp. So all of a sudden, the 20 acres of land became very valuable because it was solid ground adjacent to Lake St. Clair.
And then they had to pay the state of Michigan because they filled in part of the lake.
I never heard that part of the story.
It's called the Submerged Land Act.
The original plan between Grandpa and our dad was to build apartments on the Bergamo property, which became the Bergamo property. But back then, the original plan on that 20 acres was to build apartments. And our dad went to Washington to get approval for
Wrong.
federal mortgage money to build apartments.
Wrong.
No, it's not wrong.
It is wrong because they owned the property across from the Woods Theater, where St. Lucy's is. And they,
That ain't the story I heard, Jim.
Well,
The story I
I'm
heard from
telling you
Mother
the
was
real
that Grandma
story.
Frances declined. Grandma Frances was a part owner because she and Grandpa and Dad, and Grandma refused to sign the mortgage papers because she had already gone through the Depression, and she refused to go that far in debt at that point in her life.
and that
and
was for
she-
the property across the street from the Woods Park.
That's that what Mother
became
told
Lake
me.
Shore Village because Dad knew Homer Ferguson, who happened to be the senator from Michigan, and he knew that he could get the FHA financing because it was right after the Second World War, and they needed to build housing for the returning vets. And,
Well, What
What
you
happened?
heard
So
and what
they-
Mother told me are two different stories.
well, I'm telling you the real story.
Well, how do you know the real story?
'Cause I heard it from Dad.
So, Uncle Jim, I've always heard that your father, as well as being a lawyer, had many other business interests, and this was obviously one of them. But I'm sure Mum has told me about him having been an original investor in the optics system for.
Well, let me
High tech.
let me finish the story I was at. So anyways, so they had to find another option. Well, the other option was going into partnership with the two Berkemo brothers, because Vic Berkemo had lost his lease on the land where he was operating a driving range. So to make a long story short, the four of them, Grandpa and our dad and the two Berkemo brothers, built Berkemo Sports Center, which became a big sports attraction in St. Clair Shores. Well, Grandma Frances died of a heart attack cleaning the kitchen walls at Berkemo's. She came to Berkemo's one afternoon on a Sunday or whatever, and walked into the kitchen, and she didn't like the fact that the walls were dirty. There were grease on the walls. So she got a ladder from the back room, and she was probably in her early 60s or somewhere.
Yeah, she was in her 60s.
And she got up on the ladder and started cleaning the grease off the walls of the kitchen because it didn't meet her cleanliness standards. And she died of a heart attack in the kitchen. And that was in '53. Our grandfather, Raymond Francis, he died of a heart attack in Florida in '55. And our dad died of a heart attack in '57. So in 4 years, 3 of the 4 in that family, the only remaining one was Aunt Marie, my dad's sister.
And she thought she was going to die in 59.
And she probably did.
And she lived to her 90s.
So, Mom and Aunt Marie inherited the Francis family's share of Berkemo's, which was 100% of the land and 50% of the corporation. Well, the corporation really wasn't worth much. It was the land that was worth it. So what did they do? And Mom needed money. She had 6 kids still at home. And Aunt Marie and her husband were almost ready to retire. So they ended up selling the property to the two Berkemo brothers and 5 or 6 members of Wally's Golf Club, which was a Jewish golf club. And they formed a syndicate of 6 or 7 guys, including the two Berkemos. And they bought Mom and Aunt Marie out. And what did they do? They tore down Berkemo's, which was a going sports
Mecca.
amusement mecca. They tore it all down, and what did they build? Apartments that are still there today.
Yep.
Wow.
Which is what Dad and Grandpa wanted to do in the first place. You got anything to add to that?
No, I think you've said it all.
So I just want to make sure, so RJ, Eve was her name, right?
Eva.
Eva, and George all died of heart attacks within,
2 years of each other.
Do you know how old they were? Do you know how old?
Dad was 50.
50. Dad.
And what
Grandpa
about?
was about 70, somewhere around there.
I think so.
And I think Grandma was, what, early 60s?
Yeah, it wasn't, they weren't very old, today's standards, but. And Mom was only 43 when Dad died. She was 7 years younger than Dad and had 6 kids, and she hadn't worked at all when she was married. So she needed money. I mean, he didn't leave very much.
No, he left a double mortgage on the
Mm-hmm.
house, which she didn't know about. He'd remortgage unbeknownst to her.
And $25,000 to a secretary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really
Yeah.
There
burned.
couldn't have been a double mortgage because
Yeah.
Mother would have had to sign.
That had to come off the top
Well, she
Or-
told me that.
for a secretary who he had been having an affair with for a long time.
That's probably how he died.
Well, he probably wasn't getting his shot. Once he left the home,
Mm.
he probably wasn't getting his insulin every day.
Yeah.
She was the one that called Mom.
Yeah, she was at the hospital when we got there.
Mm.
So she must have been with him when he died, and she went.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He had a heart attack having fun.
He had a heart attack before the one that killed him.
Yeah, he did.
Because Grandpa came to stay, Grandpa
And one
Tom.
a heart attack in May.
And they were driving Grandpa Tom to the railway station in Detroit to go back to Richmond, Virginia.
And Grandpa
And-
Tom was Mother's adoptive father.
Yeah.
She never knew her own father because our grandmother had divorced him when Mom was 3, I think.
Mm.
And
Oh, he abandoned them.
huh?
Mother's biological father abandoned Nana and Mother.
Out in California.
California,
Yeah,
yeah.
because that's where his family.
Then she
Yeah.
divorced him, but
Yeah, yeah. And then Nana, our grandmother, had to go to work. And so Mom was raised by her aunts and her grandmother while Nana worked. All her life she worked.
Mm-hmm.
What did she do?
She was a
switchboard.
Switchboard operator at
at
St.
a
Mary's Hospital in
hospital,
Detroit.
yeah.
So rumor has it there was a foot model somewhere in the family.
She was.
So
Yeah.
tell us
Yeah.
about who was the foot model?
Nana.
Nana. I mean, all the pictures we have of her, she is posing. She would sit on the railing, top railing of a fence, and she was a photographer's model. And she'd have these big hats, and she was always chubby.
And she had
And there was
very
bathing
tiny
suits
feet.
as
Yeah,
well. She-
very, very
she was in-
small feet and
feet.
hands. Yeah.
So they only
And she-
photographed her feet.
She wore the sample size shoes. So, the salesman that sold the shoes would use her feet as the model for the sample shoes. Yeah.
That's incredible. Has that trait been passed along to anybody?
No, George is the one with the little feet.
And they're not so little anymore.
The rest of us have giant feet.
What was her name? Grandma Carmen's
I don't have
mother.
giant
What was her
feet. Do you
name?
have giant feet?
Her name was
Thelma Marie.
Yeah,
Thelma Marie.
Warner.
She changed it to Marie Thelma.
Yeah, yeah.
Because she didn't like Thelma, so then she became Marie T.
No, the nuns made her change her name.
Oh,
And
because
she
it
was
wasn't a
married,
saint.
3 times?
Yeah.
Twice to the same guy, though.
Yeah.
Twice,
First and second, or first and third, or second and third?
second and third.
Well, there was Sherry Hardwick.
That was the first.
There was Thomas C. Lonnie.
Yeah.
And then there was Thomas C. Lonnie.
N-
Oh, she also married George Sabi.
Sabi.
Yeah.
Sabi.
That
I don't
was a
think she
third.
married Tom Lonnie twice.
No.
I think he wanted her to marry
Yeah,
him.
and you told me she refused.
She
to marry.
refused. She had gotten burned by him.
Yeah.
But she kept the name Sabi.
That was the
Yes.
last husband.
That was the last husband she had, and she married him on his deathbed.
Yes. Yeah, he owned a bar. and he wanted to leave it to her. So she married him with the idea that, you know, she would get this bar.
She
Did
didn't.
she
She
get
was
the
the
bar?
Anna Nicole Smith of
A gold digger.
Did she get the bar?
Yes,
Yeah, she got the bar.
Where was the bar?
God
I
knows.
have no idea.
We
Somewhere in
don't know.
Detroit,
She
probably.
wasn't the best judge of men to marry.
So was Sherry Hardwick Grandma Carmen's father?
Yes,
Biological
father.
father.
Her, yeah, her
Yeah.
biological father.
But from what I've heard, the story is you all liked Grandpa Tom.
Oh,
He
yeah,
was a
he
second
was
husband.
great.
Yeah,
He was a Hickok belt salesman. So he traveled the country, and of course, he probably had affairs, and that's probably why they divorced.
But he was a good-looking
He
man.
was very handsome. Don't we have a picture on the wall there?
Yeah.
On the,
Yeah.
going
he was
upstairs?
the national sales manager for
He was.
Hickok.
And he
And he-
loved us.
Yeah.
you know.
His,
He
his
called on Macy's and Hudson's and what's the store in Chicago?
Marshall Field.
Marshall
Yeah,
Field.
he
Those
sold
were
to
his
all those
accounts.
stores. Yeah,
Those were his accounts. Yeah.
yeah.
And he was a smart dresser.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He was a
He was a good-looking man.
he was a
And he was great fun.
Yeah.
a mason.
Yes,
Yes.
he was.
Third
Yeah.
degree-
He took us to the Shriners Parade in Detroit
circus.
once.
The Shriners
Yeah.
Circus.
Third degree
Circus,
Mason.
circus, yeah.
Yeah, he was.
How long was he your grandpa?
As long as I can remember, he's the only grandpa.
Yeah, what's the
So the
only one on
grandpa
the,
we knew of.
yeah.
Well, other than Grandpa Francis.
We never knew Sabi. Didn't know
No.
him at all,
No.
Or Hardwick.
I think that happened before we were even born.
right?
But Sabi was after
Yeah,
Ronnie?
he was the last
Yeah,
one.
he was the one that had the bar that
Yeah.
was
Oh,
dying.
okay.
That's
Oh,
why
so that
I
was-
always
that was
called
right.
her Chemo Sabi.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think somebody once mentioned, I probably got this wrong, that Nana kept cigars.
No,
No,
cigarettes.
cigarettes.
She smoked cool cigarettes. Mind you, I never saw her smoke a cigarette in all of my
Did,
life.
did she
Menthol
ever
cigarette.
smoke him in the back room at Grandma's house on Torrey?
Not that I know of.
Oh.
They
Oh, okay.
lived on the door of the refrigerator at the top. I never saw her smoke a cigarette
Because
ever.
it seems to me once in a while I'd go in that back room where she was bedridden.
Yeah.
Right?
And it seems like there's this faint memory of
Probably.
cigarette smoke.
Well, it was menthol
Probably.
and God knows what she used to rub
I don't-
under
I didn't
herself.
smoke.
I mean, the most
You did smoke.
obnoxious
I
did not.
concoction.
You did smoke.
Oh, God,
Yeah.
yes.
But did
You
she
did
used to
smoke.
ask you
I
kids
tried
to
it.
fetch
I
the
never was a
cigarettes?
smoker.
Not that I know.
Oh,
No, we
I-
just used to see them every time we opened the refrigerator. There was this packet of Cools up there, and I used to think, well, hey, you know, is that what you're supposed to do? That's why they're called Cools? Keep them in the fridge?
Maybe she smoked at work.
Probably.
She used to listen in on all of the
I don't
calls
know.
that came in on the switch.
She knew everything. She knew everything that was going on. She knew all the scuttlebutt in the hospital.
Yeah, they did.
All right, what were your first non-family jobs? Like not grandma paying you, or what were your first jobs you got paid for outside the family?
Oh, God.
Shoveling snow.
Working at the post office during Christmas vacation.
Cleaning eaves troughs.
Yeah.
At a dry cleaners on Mack Avenue.
I worked for a woman down in one of the skyscrapers on Woodward Avenue for a month as a switchboard operator. And she gave me the best advice of my life. She looked like the woman in her 101 Dalmatians with the fur coat, you know, the leopard coat, and she had a little poodle under her arm and heels that high. And she was about the size of Nana, only taller. You know, a big woman. And hair done up to here and fingernails down to here, red painted fingernails.
Nana was only 4'11".
Yeah, but this was a tall woman and she was a big woman.
That's why she had blocks on her
She was a
wheels,
big,
on the pedals in her car.
a big woman, and I'd had enough because I got $50 a month doing the switchboard, and I was only just learning it. And also, I was the cleaner for the office because she had offices she rented out to men that, you know, had different businesses and needed a small space. And she also covered for the secretaries in the other offices in the whole of that building. So I did the switchboard, I cleaned the bloody offices, and once a month I had to take all our bills to the other offices and deliver them. Now this building had 26 floors on it. And it took me something like 2.5, 3 hours to go, A, to find them all, and B, to deliver them all. And at the end of the month, I had enough money, I was paying Mother and taking bus down there 5 days a week and back to buy a pair of nylons.
You had to pay Mother?
No, bus fare. I paid bus fare.
Okay.
No, she never charged. $50 a month? Please. I mean, she wasn't,
what was the
she wasn't
advice?
hard-hearted.
So what was the advice?
So I went to her and I thought, you know, I hadn't wanted to go to college, but by now all my friends were coming home with wonderful stories of the time they were having in university, and I changed my mind and I thought, I'm not doing this for the next 100 years. You know, no way. So I said to Mother, you know, I don't like it. I'm going to go and try and get into university. And she said, fine, okay, you do what you got to do. Went in and told the woman, and she said, sit down, and I did. And she said, well, she said, can you type? And I said, yeah. She said, how fast? And I said, 60 words a minute on a good day. Well, I mean, a typist had to do 100 at least to get a job. 60 was the minimum. And she said, can you do shorthand? And I said, no, never learned. She just sat back and she said, you know, Mary, she says, you got a nice smile, but that and a dime will get you a cup of coffee. And I never forgot it. And I went back and I had to take the entrance exam to get into Wayne, but I prayed they would let me in, and they did. And that woman, I thank her every day. Every day. Best advice I ever had.
You and I worked at Berkebos all through high school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I worked there
You did also,
too,
right?
but just during
They were
the
car
summer.
hops.
Yeah, to start, but then I graduated to the cashier in the cafe.
Well,
I love that
we
because
did soda jerky too.
My first job
Yeah, we did.
at Berkemos was, I think I told you about the
Busing.
busing. Then I was a soda jerk. And then I worked at the archery range. Then I worked at the miniature golf course. Then I worked on the tee line, picking up baskets and picking up golf balls. And he taught me how to drive stick shift in the
in
Jeep,
the Jeep that picked up all the balls
picking
off
up
the
golf
field.
balls. That's where I learned how to drive stick. And then I worked in the pro shop. And then when I started going to college, I worked at Wonder Bread Bakery in downtown Detroit.
Pans.
Yeah. Wonder Bread had the McDonald's contract for supplying the Detroit area McDonald's with hamburger buns. And I packed a zillion boxes of McDonald's hamburger buns. And then where did I work? Then I worked at, I started working as a co-op at Lincoln Mercury division of Ford. And I did that all the way through grad school.
Well, when did you go in the service?
6 months after I got my MBA. I took my final exam in Ann Arbor in December of '67. And I had a student deferment. So I avoided being drafted until I got finished with college. And my car was packed. I had one more exam, an accounting exam, to finish for my MBA. I took my exam, my car was packed, I got home, I drove home, and the day I got home, my 1A classification, which means you're ready for draft, for the military draft, was in the mailbox. Came in the mail the day I got home. And 4 months later, no, 5 months later, I was in the U.S. Army.
That brings up, related to first job, first car. I remember the Cougar. Was that your first car?
That was my, well, the Ford Falcon,
Nano one.
that Nano one.
Okay.
Yeah. When I don't know, I forget what year I was in. You were already out of high school, weren't you? Or were you still?
No,
Were you a senior then, or?
I think so.
What year was the film? I thought it was
No,
60.
no, you were already out, because it was my freshman year, I think. They had our high school had a raffle. That was one of their fundraisers, and Nana, our grandmother, bought 2 tickets, and she said, "If I don't win, I want my money back." She bought 2 tickets. They were 50 cents a piece, so she bought $1 worth of tickets, and they sold $50,000 worth of tickets, and they were giving two of the dads at this high school that we went to. 2 of the dads were car dealers. One was an Oldsmobile dealer, and one was a Ford dealer. And so they were giving away a F-85 Oldsmobile and a Ford Falcon. And they drew 2 tickets, and Nana's ticket was the second ticket. Well, obviously the first person took the F-85 Oldsmobile, and Nana won the Ford Falcon. And she gave it to Jim and I. By this time, she couldn't drive.
We had to pay the taxes though.
I guess, yeah, we had to pay taxes on it. I don't remember that, but anyways. She gave it to Jim and I under the conditions that it was our car, but we had to take her where she wanted to go, when she wanted to go. And so he was off, you were in Marquette by then, weren't you?
I think I was about to leave then.
I was gonna say, with you two fighting all the time, how did you divide
Well,
this car?
'cause he was gone most
I
of
was
it.
gone a year, and then I came back, and he left shortly after that to go to St. Bernard's down in Alabama,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I thought was a wonderful idea.
So what about the girls of the family? Did you get vehicles?
Hell no.
No.
Suzanne didn't need one. She had all his boyfriends picking her up every day.
He magnifies my boyfriend.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, he does.
Am I making this up?
I don't even know about her boyfriends.
No, she, every week.
Boy of the week.
You had a lot. We started going through the names on
What?
the car.
John, the guy,
He remembers.
the guy that you
The
decided to
duck guy.
go duck hunting at 5 o'clock in the morning with.
Okay, I was engaged to him eventually.
Walt
Walt
Timmons, the cop.
Oh, yeah.
What about the
Met him on the Boblo boat.
gasoline guy?
Steve Simmons.
No, Larry DeBell. But he didn't have a time for me. I just had a crush on him.
I know.
And he used to come in Berkamos and sit right in front of me. And
Remember
whenever,
Steve
in his
Simmons
uniform
from
from the,
worked at
I
Berkamos?
think it was a Sunoco station
Yeah.
on
Did she have-
Kercheval.
She
He
had a
was
crush
so
on
handsome. So handsome.
Wait, wasn't there someone who worked at Berkman's who you...
Steve Simmons.
Well, yeah.
See?
Yeah, but
Every week.
Pat from the Shell station.
they
They all
weren't
knew.
boyfriends because it wasn't mutual. I had crushes on people that didn't care about me.
Pat from
You
the
can't
gas station.
count that.
Yeah, you
Pat
can.
from the
Pat-
Shell,
yeah.
the Shell station.
Yeah, it's another one.
Shell station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cook
I mean-
Road and Mac.
Yeah.
This is 60 years of memory going back.
Well, he must not have been very important because I don't remember
We
him.
could spell the names off, so how many more were there that we don't remember?
Mother was really upset about him.
Pat?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
She doesn't even
wasn't
remember.
happy.
I don't even remember him.
She thought you should aim higher.
So you said you were engaged to at least one of these
Yes.
gentlemen.
Yeah,
So
they-
how many times were you engaged?
Well, Chuck and I were never engaged. We just decided that, eventually after we had dated long enough that we were gonna marry.
When
So
you're
he never
engaged-
asked me, so I was never engaged.
When you're engaged to a duck hunter, do you need another wife? Thank God.
He had an important job, I'll have you know.
He was boring.
He was not.
He
This
was,
is the girl who hates sports,
he
Didn't
used
want
to
to do
come on a
anything. 5 in the
date
morning, she
and
goes,
sit in our living room for about 3 hours and then go home. I mean, what's your prospects there? He didn't take you out of your own home.
remember the guy that came to the door, and I opened the door, and I says, "Hey, Ma, this one's got shoes." She was pissed.
Who was the one? Was it you or Raylene that had the double date on the same night? No, that was you. Do you remember that?
She accepted a prom date or something
Yeah.
from
Something
two
like that.
different people.
And they showed up at the same time?
No, Mother had to get her out of it.
Yeah.
Sent Mother
I don't
to the
remember that.
door.
I don't
Make up
remember
some
it very well either.
Oh, I do.
My wife did that.
Probably know it more and probably got discussed all around the room.
I was
Because I
over.
don't remember that much of it.
Oh, yeah.
I was over at Mary's house with Marty and Dave, Mary's brother, and Mary comes blowing gets out of some guy's car, comes blowing in, goes running upstairs, to change her clothes, because she had another guy that was stopping to pick her up. This was way before she and I ever started dating.
Was Galucci one of the ones that you,
Oh, yeah.
didn't he live down the street somewhere?
I don't remember.
Because she
I
wanted
can't
one of
remember
them
the-
Yeah.
to take her.
How did you resolve that?
But the other one asked her first. And she thought, well, I better accept this one because the one I really want doesn't ask me, won't be going at all. So she accepted. And then the other one she did want asked her. And she accepted that. But the one who came first was the one she didn't want to go with. And she made Mother go to the door. She said, oh, no.
How did we ever live through this?
I don't want to go with
Pagan
him.
place.
So Mother had to go and make some excuse, and get rid of him
She stood
so
up
that
for me.
she could then go out with the one she did want to go with.
Well, you mentioned earlier your mother being upset with how you met Chris. How'd that come about?
She picked him up.
I belonged to the sailing club at Wayne State University, and I only belonged to that because one of Jim's friends was Phil Finazzo, and he happened to be in the main registration building at Wayne on the day that I was joining and picking out classes, and I bumped into him, and he was surprised. He said, "Oh, Merritt, are you going here?" "Yeah, and I don't know what I'm doing, So he helped me through the registration period of picking out classes and all that. And he belonged to the sailing club. So when we finished, he said, "Are you going straight home or what?" And I said, "Well, yeah, probably." And he said, "Well, why don't you come down to the Students' Union?" He said, "and we'll have a Coke or a coffee or whatever." And I said, "Yeah, all right then." So we went down there, and he belonged to the sailing club. Well, they had a certain area in the student union that they sat in. And that's where he took me. And I met the people in the sailing club, right, because he was in it. And the sailing club used to have an end of term party every semester, right? So we never had it at the end of the exams. We had it before because you never knew how you were going to do, how things were going to turn out. So they figured that they would have the party first and not spoil it. So the night that Chris's ship came to the foot of Woodward and docked on a goodwill tour, they were doing the Great Lakes. And he was in the Royal Navy. It was one of the...
They had come through the St. Lawrence Seaway.
They had come through the St. Lawrence Seaway, and they docked in Detroit. And it was in the newspaper, and I happened to see it. Well, Mother quite often gave me the car to go down to Wayne for my classes. So when I got to school that morning, my friend and I were bored witless, and we'd had the important class or something like that. And she said, you know, I don't really feel like doing the afternoon class. I said, no, neither do I, you know. And I said, I've got the car. I said, did you see that there's a Royal Navy ship docked down at the foot of Woodward? And she says, is there? And I said, yeah. I said, it's open to the public. It was in the newspaper, you know. Why don't we go down there and see it? And she said, that's a good idea. So we did. We jumped in the car and we went down there. And the sailors, it was about the time that they were being given leave to then go and see the city and do whatever they liked, right? So they were coming off the ship and that. So we sort of put the windows down and saw these two coming by and thought, they look all right. I wonder if they'd like a tour around the city. So we just got talking to them and that and said, would you like to see, you know, Detroit? Yeah, yeah. So they jumped in and we gave them a lightning tour of all the sights in Detroit. And because my friend Michelle's parents were members of the Detroit Yacht Club, we went over there and we treated them to lunch and burgers and French fries, the whole schmaltz, right? And the party for the start of exams was that night in Michelle's boyfriend's apartment on like Cass and something, right? You know, the real shitty area of the back of Wayne State University. And we said, there's a party tonight, you know, if you'd like to come and if you've got any friends. And in the meantime, while we'd been talking to them all afternoon and taking them around, we found out they were too young for us, really. They were about 17, 18, whereas we were 19, 20. And we said, have you got any older guys in your mess? You know, you might want to bring them along in that. And didn't think any more of it. Took them back to the ship, let them off and all that. Well, that evening, we were going to this party. Well, Mother wouldn't let me have the car that night because I'd had it during the day, and she used to get a bit stroppy every now and again and think, no, you're using my car far too much. So she wouldn't let me have the car, which meant that Michelle had to find somebody else that would pick us up and drive. So anyway, we got a friend to pick us up. And I was in a shitty mood that night. I can't remember why. Probably the wrong time of the month. And I kept saying, well, who's going to be there? And she's going, what is the matter with you? You know, we always have this party and that. Don't be so difficult. Oh, all right, yeah. So the woman who drove us was older than us because we weren't old enough to buy beer. So she took our orders and went in and got all the beer for all. We gave her the money. And well, I got to the party and I thought, oh, you know, there's nobody here that I'm interested in. I mean, Michelle's boyfriend was one of the ones that sort of rented this apartment. So I found a corner. I got my bottle. And I just thought this is going to be a shitty evening, so just find a corner and drink away the night and chalk it up to experience. When in walks 3 of these Royal Navy sailors. One was called Dan Diaper, and he was about 6'4", you know, with shoulders like here and a waist down to here. Chris was one of them, and another one called Nobby Clark. You know, anyway, I thought, that uniform looks funny, you know. I recognized that. Anyway, they came in and sort of introduced themselves, so I got up and said, are you friends of, and I can't even remember what the guys were that we had driven around that afternoon. He said, yeah, he told us about the party. Are we at the right place? And we said, yeah. So I went and got one of my beers and gave it to Chris, and we sat down and started talking. Well, I mean, I was supposed to be home at midnight that night. I got in at 3 in the morning, having talked all night to this lovely sailor, and at midnight he turned 21, so we all sang happy birthday to him. And through the evenings, at some point, he said, "Can I have your address?" And I said, "Yeah, if you want it." I said, "Have you got something to write it on?" Well, he gave me a pen and a bit of paper. So I wrote my address, and at the bottom, I wrote, "I bet you forget." Because my mother's dad, a sailor in every, girl in every port, a sailor. And gave it to him. And that night, the next morning, at about 7 o'clock in the morning, that ship sailed for New York to the World's Fair. They were going. And I went home that night, and my mother was about as mad as she has ever been at me, because I rolled in at 3 o'clock in the morning, the lights were on, and you knew then that the lights were on. Oh, shit.
Mother is still up.
Yeah.
She always stayed up
Yeah.
until you got home.
She was in her dressing gown, she had the phone on her lap, sitting with her back to the window in the front of the house, and I walked in, shut the door, and she said, "What time do you think this is, young lady?" 3 o'clock. And she hit the roof. "I have been calling Michelle's parents. I have been calling all over." She says, "You're lucky you haven't found all your clothes on the porch." I couldn't have cared less. I had just met the man of my dreams, and I was on cloud cuckoo land, and she was, and I think that even made her madder. I didn't even know, I just said, Michelle went off with her boyfriend, and we didn't know where she'd gone. We were her ride, so we couldn't leave her there. We had to wait till she came back. Nobody knew where she was. We didn't have iPhones then. They didn't even have a telephone in this flat. I said, "What can we do? We had to wait for her to bring her on." Yeah, that's a ridiculous excuse. Blah, blah, blah. Get up to your room and that. Well, I went to bed that night thinking, you know what? I'm going to marry that man. And we started writing. A week later, an envelope with a blue envelope with little airmail bits all around it arrived, addressed to me, and that was the start. And I went out and got a job the next morning at Jacobson's to pay to go and see him 2 years later.
This one.
And I got it, and it
This
saved my
one
money.
meets a guy in an airplane. Who hunts her down in Florida. Does a bunch of detective work to get your name and what have you. This one, dumps a duck hunter.
He dumped me.
This one meets a ski bum out in Colorado.
He did. He broke my heart. I had to give him back his ring.
You were probably more upset about that.
You and I were the only two that went traditional roots.
More or less.
So my mom met my future husband when he came to get married.
And she fell in love with him.
Oh, the whole family did. They were falling. It was disgusting to watch. It was upsetting. They fell all over him, and I'm thinking, I'm the bride. And they go, "Oh, Christopher, I love your accent." And they were fighting with each other who was going to sit next to him at the table. And I'm sitting there watching this song and dance, thinking, there's something wrong here. And he was laughing it up. And when
they were
walked in,
perfect for each other. Perfect for each other. She was crafty and he was too. They built their own furniture. She did the upholstery. He built the couch and the chair or something. And
well, he was super smart. He was the brains of the thing. And I was the light relief in his life. They say opposites attract, and we are definitely two opposites.
But he wanted to get married in England because he didn't have money.
No. Mother wanted. Mother was still angry about the time.
I know.
It lasted 2 years. every time one of these blue airmail envelopes arrived, she said, well, what has Loverboy got to say? You know, just like that, you know.
She thought he had somebody in every
A girl,
port.
yeah, he's a sailor, you know what they say, girl in every port, you know.
How do you know he isn't married?
And I didn't divulge a lot of information. So I thought, boy, you've got that attitude, you know, just keep going. And I rang him up once at his establishment and I couldn't do it at home because we had no privacy at home. You had to take the phone into the stairwell.
Yeah, and close the door.
Yeah, but it wasn't private enough for me. I mean, not for somebody you only met for a few hours, you know. So I saved up my money in quarters, and I went down to 7 Mile and Mac because there was a phone booth there, and I rang England for 3 minutes, and it was something like $7.50, and the operator was going 25, 50, 70. And then I had to ring the mess, and of course anybody who's near the phone will answer it. And then I say, could I speak to mechanician, you know, Christopher Knight? And they'd have to then say, okay, hang on a minute, I'll have to find him. And you're thinking, the clock is ticking here. You know, I've spent like $3.50 already. Don't take too long, you know. And we'd get maybe a minute and a half if we were lucky, you know. But after that, I'd be on cloud cuckoo land for weeks after that.
That's
Yeah.
hysterical.
Yeah.
I told my mother I was going to get married. And first of all, I started dating Mary. I was in law school when I started dating Mary. And people say, well, when did you two meet? We don't know when we met. Because her brother and I were friends, and she was the little girl that lived there, you know. And so anyhow, I started dating her when I was in law school. Mary was going to UNT, a summer school. And so she starts, I said, Mary, how's things going? And she said, she says, I'm in such and such a class. And she says, I met the neatest guy. She says, he has this little sports car and he goes to SMU, you know, and he belongs to such and such a fraternity. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, where's he live? She said, well, he lives over at Grosse Pointe. And I said, well, and I was taking I had already graduated from undergraduate school, but I went back to take a class. And so I said, well, I'm going back to the east side. I said, I'll give you a ride home. You know. So she gets in we're talking about, you know, this guy, and I said, well, where does he live? And she said, well, he lives down off of Grosse Pointe Boulevard, between Grosse Pointe Boulevard and the lake, on the Moran or one of those streets down there. And I said, well, we gotta go by that way. I said, why don't you show me where he lives? And so we're going down the hill there, and she says, he lives over in that house right over there. And so I wheel in the driveway, and I blow the horn. And by this time, she's on the floor of the car, and she said, "Have you lost your mind? What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I believe in meeting my competition head on." And that's the first time that Mary knew that I was interested in taking her out, and that was sometime in latter part of June when we were going to summer school. And at her brother's wedding, and toward the end of August, we told her parents that we were getting married.
You're a fast operator.
I believe in first strike. So anyhow, I'm telling Mom that I'm going to ask Mary to marry me. And she says, well, you're free waiting 21, I guess you could do what you want.
What about you two getting married within, 5 months of each other?
Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm. Had Grandma Coleman met Brian before you got married? Really?
He came to New York, yeah, and or not New York, but
Grosse Pointe.
Grosse Pointe, yeah. And,
So she was happy about it.
I don't know whether she was happy or not.
Didn't matter.
Give her
Didn't
blessing.
matter. This is what we were going to do.
I'm the only one that didn't go to the wedding.
Oh, you didn't go?
No. She was going to get married in June,
Right.
and they decided they were changed their mind. They were going to get married during semester break. And so I had made plans with my friends to go down to Florida for semester break. And so I ended up going to Florida with I know, Dave, my now brother-in-law, and a couple of other guys. And we ended up staying at your apartment before you ever moved
And
in.
then moved in. Yeah.
And then they moved it up to January, right?
Yep.
Your wedding?
Yeah, I
It
think
was like
in
the semester
January.
break.
Yeah, it was in January.
So
We got married.
we had the keys, and I had the keys to your dad's T-Bird, because he had this fire engine red T-Bird down there. So I had the keys for the vehicle. We were down there staying, and so we went tooling around Miami, and they got married up here in Michigan.
Mhm.
And then you went to the Bahamas or something, did you?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And then you came back and we left the apartment.
I was her maid of honor, and I was already 4 months pregnant.
Was there a blizzard the day of the wedding? Or something like that?
Was there what?
A
blizzard.
That was my wedding.
It's my wedding too.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So you all live in Michigan, a state known for the snow, and you chose to get married in the depths of winter. Several of you.
Well, we got married November 21st, so you wasn't expecting much of a winter. But there was a blizzard the night before. And Sally's Bedrosian's mom was throwing our rehearsal dinner. And Marty was driving in from Milwaukee. And he did a 180 or 360 on I-94 trying
Yeah.
to drive in. Dave was coming from Toronto, where he was living with Nancy, and they had a heck of a time. I mean, this blizzard went from Chicago to Toronto. It was,
Wow.
And had Grandma Carmen met Skip before you got
Yes.
married?
Yes, 'cause we had come from Aspen to Detroit, and then we went to, it was 1976, and then we went to Washington DC and spent the bicentennial, July 4th, in Washington DC with his friends that were, the guy was a Vietnam buddy that was the best man at our wedding. So yeah, she had met him.
Did Grandma like Skip?
Not especially at first. Not especially at first, but he liked her, and he liked her far more than he liked his own mother.
Did Grandma like Dad
Yeah, I think she did.
at first?
She didn't really like anybody that
I don't think she liked my dad.
She liked Christopher.
Yeah.
Yep, she liked Christopher.
She worshipped the ground he walked on, and he thought the same of her. But that's because when he first came in, I went to get him at the airport and brought him home. And didn't coach him at all, and Mother came into the kitchen, because we came in the back door to greet him. She said, "Hello, Christopher," and he just said, "Hello, Mom." And I'm looking at him like, if you could have said anything, that is the thing you should have said. God, you jammy. And she just put her arms out in front, and he could do no wrong after that. And I just thought, how did you know? How did you know to do that? Because I didn't tell him. I certainly didn't tell him in that.
You said he was brilliant.
He was. Yeah, he was. And he used to write to her. He used to write her letters. I'm sure the rest of the husbands in our family hated him. It's because because she would pass the letters around. Yeah, Christopher, I've had a letter from Christopher today. Yeah. They were always interesting, you know, about where he'd been and what he'd seen and who he'd seen. And
I don't think Mom wanted me to get married because I still had another year of school. And she wanted me to finish school before I got married, but I did finish school and then, of course, got married and pregnant right away, but I still had another year to work and actually get paid for what I was doing. The year before, I was working at St. John Hospital for, I think it was $100 a month. But that was my internship. And then they hired me at the end of that because I had passed the board exam. And so we needed the money because he was just entering his sophomore year of medical school and had all of that to finish, plus the residency. And so we were living on what I was making at the hospital for a year. And I worked right up till 3 days before Noreen was born because she was due on the 30th of June and I had her on the 3rd of July. So my last day was the 30th. 3 days later I had her.
I think one of the most comical nights we ever had with a bunch of us was pulling out your diary of your honeymoon and the expenses, how you detailed every iota, every cent of
every
what
candy bar.
Every candy bar is listed in this diary of their.
That's not a diary, it's a shirt board.
Oh, okay.
Shirt.
You know when you send your shirts to the cleaners and they have this board within the folds of the shirt?
Yes.
So he kept track of every cent we spent on that honeymoon of a week. And we stayed in the crappiest
Was the candy bar a dime then? I think
I
it was a
don't
dime, but that was
I don't
recorded.
remember.
It was recorded that they had a candy bar.
Yes, everything, every cent that we spent. And we were spending money that people had given us for the wedding because we had to live on some of that money. So we had to be very frugal on this trip. And they laughed hysterically at what he had written on this thing.
But Uncle Jim, I know that you had done an ancestry test, a DNA. Can you just tell us what it showed? And did anybody else do an ancestry DNA test? Were they similar?
yes.
So what are we?
You're Irish.
What's the percentage? What did you find out?
53%.
About 50%.
53 or 56. Mine went up.
Yours just goes up.
Yeah.
It's like the stock market. It's like the stock market goes up and down.
It started out in the high 40s, and a year later, when I looked it up before we went on our trip to see where the counties were, it said, you have new and improved results. And I think it's about 56% Irish.
Did you do what? Yours must be all French.
No.
Why?
Jean Mélanger.
We've heard that there's some percentage of Native Americans.
Yes, 1%.
Mine said less than one.
Mine says less than that.
Yeah.
Oh, mine says 1%.
It would be less than 1% for if you were African American or Indian or.
Was there any German, any English?
Yes, because
Mine does not
mine is English, Irish,
French.
and
French and German.
European, I think it said.
Except that German is Swiss.
Yeah, mine does not. You swear that there's
It was,
German,
well,
but mine
because
does not
it
show
was
German at all.
Alsace-Lorraine, which changed
Yeah.
nationalities depending on when it was.
But that's not where they were from originally.
I thought that was
I got
what we
the- I
were
got-
always told.
No, I've got the towns. I've already found it exactly the towns. There's 2 towns that they came from.
Well, Mary did the ancestry.
So are they Swiss or German or
I'd have to
whatever?
look at the records. But I have that information.
Switzerland doesn't, its borders haven't changed much, but everything around them has changed a lot.
Well, when our cousin, when we went to that
That
Francis reunion,
yeah.
she had all this stuff up on the walls of her garage or whatever. And she said something about being Swiss, and I said, well, I always thought we were German, you know. She says, no, we're Swiss. So I went back and I checked. Well, it was an interesting fact that in the census information, if you go back on the 10-year census, it lists German, you know, German over, and then in 1870 they list Swiss. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why would it be 1870 Swiss? Franco-Prussian War. I mean, who wants to be German? You know, you're cannon fodder. So I think Swiss, you know, neutral country, you know, so that's my theory. That our ancestors were smart people. They didn't want to get shot at.
All right, one last question. A couple things. Amongst you, who's the smartest?
Me.
Okay. Joel agree?
Yes.
Yell out the name or point.
Yeah.
Who's
Goody
the funniest? Goody two-shoes. Who's the funniest?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Jim.
Mary.
Most athletic?
Not me.
None of
That's
us
what-
are.
Raylene. Yes, Raylene was.
Ice skater. She's a fabulous
Yeah.
ice skater.
Yeah. She's a good golfer.
Good golfer.
Way to go, Mom. And best looking?
All of us.
Good answer.
Biggest handful.
Yeah.
Sweetest?
What a baby.
Georgia.
Miss Congeniality?
The favorite?
The favorite?
Oh, Nana.
Oh, with Nana, yes, definitely. Genie boy.
And with mother too.
Why?
Because he used to get the sympathy and that. He used to come home and, oh, I can't do, you know, physics. I
Because
can't do.
this one would
um,
aggregate,
yeah, and he picked on her,
Abrogate
so
or
she would stand up.
I can't talk,
Aggravate.
Yeah. Aggravate him.
aggravate him to no end.
He tried to kill me a few times.
And on that note,
8 minutes are up.
Mum has often commented that as a child, she felt that being one of 6 just meant living in a really loud household with
Oh, it
lots of
was
annoying
madhouse.
siblings. But I wondered if your view, for all of you, of being one of 6 has changed as you've got older, and do you really like the fact that you're one out of a large group of siblings?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because the fact that you're all here today requires quite a lot of effort on some of your parts to make it here, and it seems to me as though you've kept that
That's
up
why
fairly
he's living here,
consistently.
because I thought it would be tough.
So in spite of you, he's still here.
But when Mom died, she had left instructions of how we were to divide up what was left of everything. And she knew that certain things people had spoken, I really would like that, you know. And so in her instructions, it was we were to start with the oldest and pick one thing that was left that we really wanted. And then after everyone had their say, the first round, then if there were things left, I wanted her ring. This is the ring that I'm wearing. And Georgia had a cabinet that, it was a Chinese cabinet, sort of like that, but it was green. And she wanted that. And what did you want, Mary? You wanted a picture.
Yeah, and Dad's christening, yeah.
Yeah.
You wanted the picture in Dad's office.
Yeah. And what you
I
wanted?
wanted nothing.
Well, what about that bird that had the light in it?
Mary wanted that.
And what did you want? Had you spoken
took
up
the-
for anything?
You took
No, I don't
the
think so.
charm bit bracelet.
Oh, she's got the other
Yeah.
picture,
Cause I,
the one over the fireplace.
No, but the first thing Raylene took was the charm bracelet that you had bought, Mom, and you had added all
oh,
the
I
charms
think,
to
yeah,
it.
I think so.
I was
Yeah.
telling Karen about that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then the
but
painting,
my-
Mom. That's
Our
in the other
friends couldn't believe that we didn't fight over what was left.
That was one of the,
No,
that was
but-
one of the most enjoyable days that the six of us spent together. We got together at 9 o'clock in the morning or something, we ended up,
About 6 o'clock in the evening, I think.
it was later
And
than
it was
that.
snowing too, wasn't it? January,
Yeah.
January, I think it started
We spent-
snowing.
This one says, you, talking about going down to boarding school in Monroe. She says, I never knew that. Remember that?
Oh, yeah, we went to boarding, Raylene and I went to boarding school.
All right, settle this because you did not like it, you did, and Jim says it's the opposite.